The crimson sunset of Kepler 438b painted the jungle canopy in shades of fire and shadow, casting long fingers of light across the human diplomatic compound. Captain James Rourke stood on the elevated platform, overlooking the ceremonial grounds, watching as Threnody warriors performed their evening ritual dance alongside his own soldiers. 6 months of careful relationship building had created something unprecedented, a true alliance between species. A communication array behind him chirped with an incoming priority message. His aide, Sergeant Blake, approached with the decoded transmission. "Captain, we've got an unscheduled arrival requesting emergency assistance. Single occupant, civilian research vessel. Claims to be Dr. Lixari Thane, xenorchaeologist from the University of New Geneva." Rourke's expression remained neutral, but internally he smiled. Finally, intelligence had warned him that Xerelian infiltrators were targeting human diplomatic missions throughout the Outer Rim. He'd volunteered for this remote posting specifically to draw them out, spending months, making himself an irresistible target, a lone human commander, building dangerous alliances that threatened the Empire's shadow control. Grant landing clearance to Pad 3. Full scanning protocols. But make it look routine. I'll greet our guest personally. An hour later, Rourke watched the sleek research vessel settle onto the landing pad with practiced grace. The hatch hissed, open, releasing a cloud of atmospheric processors, and then she emerged. Lixari was exactly what he'd expected as a Xerelian agent to be devastatingly beautiful in that carefully engineered way. Her skin held the faintest emerald tint that would register as exotic to human eyes rather than alien. Raven black hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her form-fitting expedition suit seemed designed to showcase every curve while maintaining professional credibility. She moved with fluid grace that spoke of centuries of physical conditioning. "Captain Rourke?" she called out, approaching with a grateful smile that was perfectly calibrated to inspire protectiveness. "I cannot thank you enough for responding to my distress call. I'm Dr. Lixari Thane." Rourke stepped forward, offering his hand in greeting. The moment their skin made contact, he felt the subtle biochemical tingle pheromone release designed to create instant attraction and emotional bonding. A signature Xerelian technique that would be imperceptible to most humans. "Welcome to Kepler 438b, Doctor. I understand you're having technical difficulties?" "Navigation failure during a survey of the ancient Threnody ruins," she explained, her voice carrying just the right note of scientific enthusiasm mixed with vulnerability. "I've been drifting for 3 days. Your compound was the nearest safe harbor." As they walked toward the main facility, Rourke noted how her eyes cataloged everything defensive positions, personnel strength, communication arrays. Her questions were perfectly innocent curiosity, but he recognized the intelligence-gathering pattern. "Your work here is remarkable," Lixari said, pausing to watch human children playing with young Threnody. "This level of cultural integration typically takes decades to achieve." "Trust and respect go both ways," Rourke replied. "The Threnody are a proud people with ancient wisdom. We have much to learn from each other." He caught the subtle shift in her expression, approval mixed with calculation. She was already building her psychological profile of him, identifying which emotional triggers would be most effective. That evening, as Lixari charmed his officers during dinner, Rourke observed her technique with professional admiration. She was exceptional, perhaps the most skilled operative the Xerelians had ever sent against him. Her pheromone control was subtle enough to influence without detection. Her conversational manipulation masterful. Her physical presence perfectly calibrated to inspire desire while maintaining approachable elegance. But Rourke had spent years developing immunity to Xerelian biochemical warfare. More importantly, he understood their psychology, their methodologies, their inevitable weaknesses. Every Xerelian agent was trained to view emotions as tools rather than genuine experiences, limitation he intended to exploit. After dinner, as Lixari settled into her assigned quarters, she believed she had successfully established her cover and begun her seduction campaign. She had no idea that her target had been expecting her arrival for months, had studied her species' techniques extensively, and was already 3 moves ahead in a game she didn't even know they were playing. The hunt had begun, but the question remained, who was really the predator? The morning mist clung to the jungle floor like ghostly fingers as Lixari made her way through the compound, ostensibly cataloging plant specimens for her research. In reality, she was mapping every defensive position, every routine, every potential weakness in Captain Rourke's operation. Her centuries of training had taught her that successful infiltration required patience and meticulous preparation. She found Rourke exactly where she'd expected, in the communications center, reviewing diplomatic reports from other human colonies. The perfect opportunity to begin Phase 2 of her mission. "Captain," she called softly, allowing just a hint of breathlessness to color her voice. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wanted to thank you again for your hospitality." Rourke looked up from his datapad, and Lixari released a carefully measured dose of pheromones, not enough to be detected, but sufficient to create a subtle sense of attraction and well-being. His pupils dilated slightly, exactly as expected. "Not at all, Doctor. How are you settling in?" "Wonderfully, though I must admit I'm fascinated by what you've accomplished here." She moved closer, her body language open and admiring. "The integration between your people and the Threnody is remarkable. How did you manage to build such trust so quickly?" As Rourke explained his diplomatic approach, Lixari listened with genuine interest, not because she cared about interspecies relations, but because understanding his methods would help her dismantle them. She noted his passion for the work, his respect for indigenous cultures, his obvious pride in his achievements. All potential pressure points for later manipulation. "You speak of them with such reverence," she observed, stepping closer still. "It's rare to find someone who sees beyond the surface differences." "The Threnody have survived on this world for millennia," Rourke replied. "Their wisdom runs deeper than most realize. They see patterns that escape human perception." Lixari filed that information away. His respect for alien perspectives could be turned against him, make him doubt human superiority, question orders from Earth Command. She allowed her hand to brush his arm briefly, a seemingly innocent contact that delivered another subtle pheromone dose. "I'd love to learn more about their culture," she said. "Perhaps you could show me the ruins I was meant to study? I understand they're quite spectacular." That afternoon, Rourke led her through the jungle toward the ancient Threnody temple complex. The trek provided perfect opportunities for Lixari to display her physical capabilities, leaping gracefully across fallen logs, navigating treacherous terrain with fluid ease, her expedition suit clinging to her form in ways that would captivate any human male. "You're quite athletic for an academic," Rourke observed as she scaled a particularly challenging cliff face. "Field archaeology requires physical conditioning," she replied, allowing herself to appear slightly out of breath as she reached the top. "Though I must say, your own fitness is impressive." "Military training? Special Forces background," he confirmed. "Before I moved into diplomatic service." Another piece of intelligence gathered. Special Forces meant advanced combat training, psychological conditioning, resistance to interrogation techniques. She would need to be especially careful with her approach. The ruins themselves were genuinely magnificent, towering spires of crystalline stone that seemed to grow from the jungle floor like organic sculptures. Lixari found herself momentarily distracted by their beauty, a dangerous lapse in focus that she quickly corrected. "The Threnody believed these structures were grown rather than built," Rourke explained as they explored the central chamber. "Their ancestors had biotechnology that we're only beginning to understand." "Fascinating," Lixari murmured, allowing wonder to color her voice. She moved closer to examine a wall carving, deliberately positioning herself so that Rourke would have to lean over her shoulder to see what she was studying. His proximity allowed her to release more pheromones while appearing completely innocent. "This symbol here," she said, pointing to an intricate glyph. "It seems to represent some kind of union or bonding. The intertwining patterns suggest a deep connection between different entities." "The Threnody concept of Velthara," Rourke confirmed. "Roughly translated, it means souls that choose each other. They believe that true partnership transcends physical form." Lixari turned to face him, finding herself unexpectedly close. His eyes were intense, studying her face with an attention that made her suddenly self-conscious. For a moment, she felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest, something that wasn't part of her carefully controlled emotional responses. "You seem to understand their philosophy deeply," she said softly. "I've had excellent teachers," he replied. "The Threnody don't lie or manipulate. They value authenticity above all else." Something in his tone made Lixari pause. Was there a subtle challenge in his words? She searched his expression, but found only apparent sincerity. Still, her training made her cautious. That evening, she joined him for dinner under the stars, the jungle alive with bioluminescent insects that painted the darkness in shades of blue and green. She had dressed carefully, not provocatively, but in a way that suggested understated elegance and approachability. "Tell me about yourself, James," she said, deliberately using his first name. "What drives someone to choose this kind of isolation?" "I wouldn't call it isolation," he replied, pouring wine from a bottle he'd apparently been saving. "I'm surrounded by fascinating people, engaged in meaningful work. What more could someone ask for? Companionship of your own kind, perhaps." She suggested, allowing a note of longing to enter her voice. "It must be lonely sometimes." Rourke's smile was enigmatic. "Loneliness is a choice, Doctor. There's always connection to be found if you're willing to look beyond surface appearances." As the evening progressed, Lixari found herself genuinely enjoying their conversation. Rourke was intelligent, thoughtful, and surprisingly well-read in xenopsychology. More concerning, she found herself responding to him in ways that went beyond her mission parameters. When he laughed at her carefully crafted anecdotes, she felt a warm satisfaction that had nothing to do with successful manipulation. Later, as he walked her back to her quarters, she made her first overt move. Pausing at her door, she turned to face him, allowing vulnerability to show in her expression. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "It's been a long time since I've felt so understood." She stepped closer, her intentions clear. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she felt the familiar thrill of a target falling under her spell. But then he simply smiled and stepped back. "Sleep well, Lixari. Tomorrow I'll introduce you to the tribal elders. They're eager to meet you." As her door closed behind her, Lixari felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. The seduction was proceeding according to plan, but something felt different about this target. James Rourke was not responding. Quite as she'd expected, she would need to accelerate her timeline. 3 weeks had passed since Lixari's arrival, and the jungle moon cast silver light through her quarters as she prepared for what she intended to be the decisive phase of her mission. Her research into the compound's defenses was complete, her psychological profile of Rourke thoroughly developed. Tonight, she would complete his seduction and extract the intelligence the Empire required. She had chosen her approach carefully, not the obvious route of direct sexual manipulation, but something more subtle. Rourke had shown himself to be a man who valued emotional connection over physical attraction. She would give him vulnerability, make him feel needed, chosen. A soft knock interrupted her preparations. Rourke's voice called through the door, Lixari? I wanted to show you something special. The aurora should be visible tonight. Perfect. She opened the door to find him holding a thermal blanket and a bottle of wine, his expression boyishly enthusiastic. The Threnody consider the aurora sacred. They believe it reveals the true nature of souls. I'd love to see it, she replied, allowing genuine curiosity to color her voice. It wasn't entirely feigned. She had never experienced natural phenomena for their beauty alone, only as tactical considerations. He led her to a secluded clearing on the compound's edge, where the canopy opened to reveal the star-filled sky. As they settled on the blanket, streams of green and gold light began dancing across the heavens, more magnificent than any display she had witnessed on other worlds. It's breathtaking, she whispered, and found that she meant it. The Threnody say the aurora shows the connections between all living things. Rourke explained, his voice soft in the darkness. The way energy flows between souls, creating patterns of meaning and purpose. Lixari turned to study his profile, illuminated by the ethereal light above. There was something different about him, a depth that went beyond her initial assessment. As she watched, she felt an unfamiliar stirring in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with pheromone manipulation or mission objectives. You really believe that? She asked. That souls can connect across species, across vast differences? I've seen it happen, he replied, turning to meet her gaze. When two beings choose to truly see each other, something profound occurs. Barriers dissolve. Truth emerges. A moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Lixari felt the familiar thrill of a target falling under her influence. But something else accompanied it, a genuine desire for connection that she had never experienced before. James, she said softly, allowing her carefully constructed walls to lower slightly. There's something I need to tell you. My research here, it's not what it seems. His eyes never left hers. What do you mean? This was her moment, the carefully planned revelation that would make him feel trusted, special, chosen above all others. I'm not just studying ruins. I'm documenting the integration techniques you've developed. My university believes your methods could revolutionize human-alien relations. It was a perfect lie, wrapped in enough truth to be believable. But as she spoke, she felt a pang of something that might have been guilt. You're studying me, he said, but there was no accusation in his voice, only gentle amusement. I'm trying to understand you, she replied, and realized it was more honest than she'd intended. You're unlike anyone I've ever met. He reached out to touch her face, his fingers tracing her cheek with surprising tenderness. And you're far more complex than you pretend to be. The kiss, when it came, was gentle at first, a soft exploration that made her heart race in ways she couldn't control. She had been kissed countless times in service to her missions, but this felt different. When his arms pulled her closer, when his lips moved against hers with growing passion, she forgot about Empire protocols and mission parameters. They made love under the dancing aurora, and for the first time in her centuries of existence, Lixari experienced genuine intimacy. Every touch, every whispered endearment, every moment of shared pleasure felt real in a way that terrified and exhilarated her. When Rourke held her afterward, his breathing soft against her neck, she found herself wanting to stay in this moment. Forever. I've never felt anything like that, she whispered, and immediately regretted the admission. Such honesty was dangerous, unprofessional. Nor have I, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. Lixari, there's something I need to tell you as well. Her heart clenched with unexpected fear. What is it? I know you're not who you claim to be. The words hit her like a physical blow. Every muscle in her body tensed, years of training screaming. At her to flee, to fight, to do anything but lie vulnerable in the arms of someone who had discovered her deception. I don't understand, she managed, though her voice came out strained. "You're Zirelian," he said simply. "An infiltrator sent to gather intelligence on human defensive capabilities. You've been trying to seduce me since the moment you arrived." Lixaries. Mind raced through options: denial, misdirection, attack. But she found herself frozen, staring into eyes that held no anger, no betrayal, only a sadness that cut deeper than any accusation. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "From the beginning. I've been expecting someone like you for months. The Empire doesn't tolerate threats to their shadow control." The betrayal hit her in waves. Everything she had felt, every moment of connection, every flutter of genuine emotion, it had all been a lie. He had been playing her just as expertly as she had been playing him. "So this was all a game to you," she said, pulling away from his embrace. "My feelings, my what we just shared ... No," he said quietly, "that was real, for both of us. But—" Lixari was already moving, gathering her clothes with mechanical precision. The woman who had made love under the aurora was gone, replaced by the trained operative who had learned never to trust, never to feel, never to let emotions compromise the mission. "I need to go," she said, not looking at him. "Lixari, wait." But she was already walking back toward the compound, leaving him alone under the dancing lights that had witnessed the death of something that might have been love. The next morning arrived gray and oppressive, storm clouds gathering over the jungle like Lixari's own turbulent emotions. She had spent the night in her quarters, alternating between rage at her own foolishness and a hollow ache she couldn't name. Her training had prepared her for many contingencies, but not for the possibility that she might genuinely fall for her target, or that he might have been manipulating her from the very beginning. A soft chime indicated someone requesting entry. She knew it would be Rourke, but she had to face him eventually. The mission parameters were clear: extract intelligence, eliminate the threat, disappear. Personal feelings were irrelevant. "Come in," she called, her voice carefully neutral. Rourke entered carrying a tray with coffee and local fruit, his expression cautious but not hostile. "I thought you might be hungry. We need to talk." "There's nothing to discuss," Lixari replied, not looking up from her data pad where she was reviewing extraction protocols. "You've compromised my mission. I'll be leaving within the hour. Will you?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Have you checked your ship's status recently?" Something in his tone made her pause. She accessed her vessel's diagnostic systems remotely, and her blood ran cold. Critical navigation components had been disabled, life support limited to planetary atmosphere only. She was effectively stranded. "You sabotaged my ship," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "I had my people make some modifications, yes. Nothing permanent, but enough to ensure you'd stay long enough to hear what I have to say." Lixari stood slowly, her hand moving instinctively toward the concealed weapon at her hip. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, human. I am not some naive colonist you can manipulate with pretty words and romantic gestures." "I know exactly what you are," Rourke said calmly. "Agent Lixari Vex, third-tier operative of the Zirelian. Intelligence Directorate. Specialized in long-term infiltration and target elimination. 147 successful missions over the past 2 centuries. You've never failed an assignment." The accuracy of his intelligence hit her like a physical blow. "How could you possibly know?" "Because I've been studying your people for years," he interrupted. "Every technique, every psychological profile, every biochemical manipulation. The Empire's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. You're predictable." "Predictable?" Lixari's voice carried a dangerous edge. "You think you understand." "You?" "I understand that you're trained to see emotions as tools rather than experiences. That you've been conditioned to believe attachment is weakness. That genuine connection is impossible. But last night proved that wrong, didn't it? Lixari felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. Last night was a mistake. A moment of weakness that won't be repeated, was it? Rourke stood, moving closer, despite the obvious threat she presented. Because I felt something too, Lixari. Something that went beyond any mission parameters or strategic objectives. Stop, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. You felt it too. For the first time in your life, you experienced genuine intimacy, real connection. And it terrified you because it meant everything you've been taught about your nature is a lie. The words hit too close to home. Lixari's training took over, her hand moving to her weapon with deadly precision. But as she drew the plasma pistol, she found herself hesitating. The man standing before her wasn't some faceless enemy. He was James, who had held her gently as she came apart in his arms, who had whispered endearments that made her heart race. I could kill you, she said, but her voice shook. Yes, you could, he agreed, but you won't. Because despite everything you've been taught, despite centuries of conditioning, you're not the emotionless weapon the Empire created. You're a person capable of love, of choice, of breaking free from the chains they've wrapped around your soul. You don't understand, Lixari said, tears she hadn't expected stinging her eyes. I can't be what you want me to be. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. Then let me show you, Rourke said softly. Let me help you discover who you really are beneath all that programming. For a moment, Lixari wavered. The weapon in her hand felt impossibly heavy, the weight of centuries of conditioning, warring with the memory of genuine connection. But then her training reasserted itself, and she stepped back, her grip tightening on the pistol. This is all another manipulation, she said, her voice hardening. Another layer of your game. Make the operative question her nature, turn her against her own people. Very clever, Captain. But I won't be your weapon against the Empire. I'm not asking you to be a weapon, Rourke replied. I'm offering you a choice. Help me expose the Empire's infiltration network, not as my agent, but as a free person choosing her own path. Or return to your masters and spend eternity as their tool, never knowing what you might have become. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and pain. Lixari's entire worldview hung in the balance. Everything she had believed about herself and her purpose called into question by emotions she had never expected to feel. I need time, she said finally, lowering the weapon but not holstering it. Time is something we don't have much of, Rourke replied. Your handlers will expect regular reports. How long before they send backup? 72 hours, she admitted. If I don't transmit confirmation of mission progress, they'll assume I've been compromised. Then we have 3 days to decide our future, he said. Yours and mine. As he left her quarters, Lixari sank into her chair, the weight of her dilemma settling over her like a shroud. For the first time in her long life, she faced a choice that wasn't dictated by mission parameters or imperial doctrine. The freedom was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. Outside, the storm was building, matching the turmoil in her heart. The storm broke at dawn on the third day, sheets of rain lashing the compound as Lixari stood at her window, watching the jungle bend under nature's fury. In 6 hours, she would miss her scheduled transmission to the Empire. In 12, backup. Operatives would be dispatched to investigate her silence. The weight of decision pressed down on her like the storm clouds above Dot. She had spent the past 2 days in careful isolation, reviewing every moment since her arrival, analyzing every conversation, every touch, every moment of connection with James Rourke. Her training demanded she see it all as elaborate manipulation, but her heart, a organ she had never trusted before, insisted otherwise. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. It's me, Rourke's voice called through the door. May I come in? She opened the door to find him soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, holding a sealed container in his hands. I've been thinking about what you said, he said, water dripping onto her floor. About not knowing how to be anything other than what you are. I wanted to show you something. He opened the container to reveal a small crystalline device Zarellian. Technology, but modified with human components. I found this in your ship's secondary systems. A behavioral monitor designed to track your emotional responses and report deviations to your handlers. Lixari's breath caught. She had known about the standard monitoring systems, but this was different. More invasive, more controlling than she had imagined. They've been watching everything, she whispered. Every thought, every feeling. For over a century, Rourke. Confirmed. The modifications I made to your ship disabled it. For the first time in your adult life, you're truly free to feel without surveillance. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Every mission, every moment of doubt, every flickering emotion, the Empire had been cataloging it all, adjusting her conditioning accordingly. She wasn't just an agent. She was a laboratory subject, a weapon constantly refined and calibrated. Why are you showing me this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you deserve to know the truth about your own mind, he replied. And because I want you to understand that everything you felt here, the connection, the attraction, the love, it's all real. It's all you. The word love hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than any weapon. Lixari felt tears streaming down her face, centuries of suppressed emotion finally breaking free. I don't know how to love, she said. I don't know how to be free. Then learn, Rourke said, stepping closer. We'll figure it out together. He reached out to touch her face, and this time she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch, allowing herself to feel the warmth of genuine affection without fear or calculation. The Empire will send others, she said. When I don't. Report, when they realize I've been compromised, they'll come for both of us. Let them come, Rourke replied. We'll be ready. You don't understand their capabilities. The resources they can bring to bear. I understand perfectly, he interrupted. But I also understand something they don't. I understand that love is stronger than fear, that choice is more powerful than conditioning, and that people fighting for their freedom are capable of extraordinary things. Lixari searched his face, looking for any sign of deception, any trace of the manipulation she had been trained to expect. But she found only sincerity, only a man who had somehow seen past her conditioning to the person trapped beneath. If we do this, she said slowly, if I choose to help you, there's no going back. The Empire doesn't forgive betrayal. I know, he said. I'm asking you to choose anyway. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of centuries of conditioning warring with the newer, more fragile sensation of genuine emotion. When she opened them again, her decision was made. I choose you, she said simply. I choose us. A kiss. That followed was different from their first, not driven by mission parameters or biochemical manipulation, but by genuine affection and the intoxicating freedom of choice. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, the space between them charged with possibility. We'll need to move quickly, Lixari said, her mind already shifting to tactical considerations. I know their protocols, their response patterns. We can stay ahead of them, but we'll need allies. The Threnody have agreed to help, Rourke said. They've seen what imperial control does to free peoples. They're willing to fight. And the other human colonies? Some will listen, others will need convincing. But we have something the Empire doesn't: the truth about their infiltration methods. Your testimony could expose their entire shadow network. Lixari nodded, feeling a strange sense of purpose that had nothing to do with imperial objectives. For the first time in her life, She was fighting for something she had chosen, not something she had been programmed to value. "There's something else," she said, moving to her personal effects. She withdrew a small data crystal, its surface pulsing with encrypted information. "Everything I know about Imperial operations, agent identities, infiltration targets, planned operations. Insurance I kept in case they ever decided I was expendable." Rourke's eyes widened. This could change everything. "It will change everything," she confirmed. "But once we release this information, there's no hiding. They'll hunt us to the ends of the galaxy. Then we'd better make sure our first strike counts," he said, pulling her into his arms. As the storm raged outside, Lixari found herself in the unfamiliar position of planning a future rather than just completing a mission. The woman who had arrived to seduce and destroy James Rourke was gone, replaced by someone who had chosen love over duty, freedom over security. The Empire had created her to be their perfect weapon, but they had made one crucial error. They had given her the capacity to choose. And she had chosen love, chosen hope, chosen the dangerous and beautiful possibility of writing her own destiny. The rebellion began with a kiss, but it would end with freedom.